Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's Crenshaw Northern Extension scoping meeting. We'll begin today's meeting in about 5 minutes at 6:35 p.m. to allow everyone to log in and access today's presentation. Melanie, I see some people have their hands up on the attendee list. Maybe if you have questions, whenever you're raising your hands up, put them in the Q&A box. We will, definitely, I think answer a lot of questions in regards to this project. We're going to go through some housekeeping items, things like that, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So we're going to get started in a couple minutes at 6:35, just allowing more people to arrive. And for language, other things, we'll definitely explain that in just a few minutes. Just about one more minute and we'll get started. One more minute.
The Spanish interpreter is ready.
Started. Thank you for joining us today. This is the second public scope meeting for the Crenshaw Northern Extension project. If there are any elected officials who'd like to be introduced to the meeting, please post your name and your office in the Q&A. As a reminder to everyone, we will be taking comments at the end of the presentation. At this stage, during the initial scoping period, we will not be answering questions, but rather encouraging comments regarding the project and proposed alternatives and options. We also want you to tell us what is important to study during the draft EIR, which might include key destinations that you think are important to serve, what makes this an important transportation service for you, or what concerns do you have about construction impacts? This will be released later and should ultimately answer any questions you may have regarding the project and potential impacts and mitigations. We'll talk more about that in the logistics later, but please know that the chat function has been disabled for this meeting. Instead, all comments during today's meeting should be submitted either in writing or made during the oral comments period following our presentation. Of course, you can always comment outside of today's meeting through our project website, metro.net/Crenshaw North, or our project email, crenshaw.north@metro.net, and our project hotline at 213-418-3093. Comments will be accepted until Friday, May 28th, 2021. Additionally, we will also post the recordings of each scope meeting on our project page. The draft EIR, which will be released later and should ultimately answer any questions you have regarding the project and potential impacts and mitigations. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Jay Greenstein with LA City Councilman Paul Kretz's office, as well as Mayor Horvath with the City of West Hollywood. So thank you for joining us today. Some quick housekeeping items. We have both Spanish and Russian translation available for this in all of our project scope meetings. For either interpretation, just click on the world or globe icon and pick the language you would like to listen to and follow along as we move forward through the presentation. As I'm speaking right now, there is simultaneous Russian translation occurring.
Solo para recordar que tenemos interpretación en español disponible. Para esta y todas las siguientes presentaciones, solo tiene que dar clic en el icono de mundo, escoja la opción para escuchar en español y para poder escuchar el resto de esta presentación traducida en español.
Thank you, Alan. Please note that today's meeting is being recorded and that all attendees' cameras are off, with microphones muted until the comment period, which will immediately follow Metro's presentation. If you have any technical issues accessing the meeting and presentation, please call or text our technical support hotline at 213-316-6105. That's 213-316-6105. To ensure a fair and equitable process by all participants, we ask that you please follow these rules and respect the meeting format and everyone's opportunity to comment. Please turn off your phones and background noise when speaking. Treat fellow community members, agency representatives, Metro staff, and others with respect. Address all comments to Metro staff and consultants, not to other attendees, and please maintain a conversational tone. And also, when you're commenting, please take your time as you're speaking. We have a court reporter recording this as well. The agenda. Here's the agenda for today's scope meeting. We will start with a 30-minute presentation on the project, which will include a brief history and background, project goals and objectives, and alternatives currently under study. We'll then give an overview of the EIR, the environmental process, and the next steps for the project. After we finish the presentation, we will be here until 8:30 p.m. to allow enough time for participants to provide comments. And with that, I'll turn it over to our project manager, Roger Martin, and our deputy project manager, Alex Musavi, who will take us to the presentation. Take it away, Roger.
Hey, Patrick, thank you, sir, and good afternoon and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Scoping is the first step in the environmental clearance process consistent with the California Environmental Quality Act. You may have heard the term CEQA before, so that's what we're doing. And for awareness, there's no federal funding attached to the project at this time or associated with the project. So we will not be environmentally clearing the project under NEPA or the Federal National Environmental Policy Act. But during this meeting, we have three major objectives. One, of course, is to provide an overview of the project and alternatives under study. Two is to describe the draft EIR process and how it will apply to the project. And third, of course, we want to hear from you in the project, on the project, including the project alternatives and options and any environmental issues of particular concern to you. But before we go forward, we'd like to show you a short introductory video that will give you some background on the project and alternatives under study. So with that, can we do that, please?
Metro is planning rail to bridge divides. We want to provide you the latest information on the Crenshaw Northern Extension, which will create an important north-south connection through the heart of LA.
Some of the biggest employment centers and destinations in Southern California are also the hardest to get to. Central LA has some of the worst traffic in the entire county, and while Metro's rail network is expanding west, this area is still not directly served by high-capacity transit.
Metro has a plan to make it easier to get around, with dozens of projects to improve public transportation, including the Crenshaw Northern Extension.
This project will help to fill in key parts of Metro's network to connect more people to more places and create more access to opportunity by connecting areas that have been historically separated by the I-10 freeway and uneven amounts of investment.
We're preparing the next phase of planning on this project, but before we get into the latest updates and next steps, we'll give a quick recap of how we got here.
During the planning of the Crenshaw LAX project, Metro identified the need to fill the gap between LAX, the E line, D line, and the B line. The Crenshaw Northern Extension was included as a project to be funded by Measure M, a half-cent sales tax measure that passed in 2016.
While Measure M has this project slated for the future, Metro is planning it now because there are exploratory efforts that could make funding available sooner.
In summer of 2018, Metro finished an initial feasibility study and alternatives analysis for this project, which identified 5 potential routes or alternatives. In the fall of 2020, Metro completed an advanced alternative screening study, which further studied these routes.
During the alternatives analysis study, public comments included preferences on routes, as well as transit connections and destinations to be served, including the Hollywood Bowl, the need for pedestrian safety and having rail at a different level than the street, concerns about neighborhood preservation and access to stations.
Based on public feedback and additional study, we further refined our alternatives to 3 potential routes for this project, which are the La Brea alternative, the Fairfax alternative, and the Fairfax-San Vicente hybrid alternative.
From the E line, all alternatives go north up Crenshaw Boulevard to a proposed station at Crenshaw Adams in the core of West Adams. From there, all go north to a proposed station at the Midtown Shopping Center with connections to the Pico Rimpau Transit Center.
The La Brea alternative goes up La Brea Avenue, connecting to the future Metro D line at Wilshire La Brea, and then to Highland Avenue to link up to the Metro B line at Hollywood Highlands Station.
The Fairfax alternative goes up Fairfax Avenue, connecting to the future Metro D line station at Wilshire Fairfax, with a station at Museum Row. From there, it heads north with a proposed station near the Grove. It turns east at Santa Monica Boulevard before connecting to the Metro B line at Hollywood Highlands Station.
The Fairfax-San Vicente alternative also goes north on Fairfax Avenue, with proposed stations to serve Museum Row and the Grove, before veering west on Beverly Boulevard to serve Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and the Beverly Center. It then turns north on San Vicente, with the proposed station to serve West Hollywood's Nightlife District and the Pacific Design Center, before turning east to link up to the Metro B line at the Hollywood Highlands Station.
Based on public input, we've also added an optional Hollywood Bowl terminus to each of these alternatives. A station at the Hollywood Bowl could improve the travel options to this major regional destination while serving up to 1 million trips there each year.
These are the alternatives that we will be taking into the environmental process. Environmental review is a formal, regulated process where Metro will study various aspects of each alternative, including benefits, cost, feasibility, community impacts, and any necessary mitigations.
There are several points of community input during this process as Metro develops the Environmental Impact Report, which will recommend a proposed project to the Metro Board of Directors for approval.
We are now embarking on the first step in this process, which is called scoping. At this stage, we want to hear from you about what Metro should consider and study as we prepare the Environmental Impact Report for the Crenshaw Northern Extension.
possible comments might include input on destinations that you think are important to serve, what would make this a good transportation service for you, or concerns you might have about construction impacts.
We will be conducting formal scoping meetings where we can hear your comments. We'll also have information about the project online for you to browse on your own time.
We can also take formal comments via mail, phone, email, and our website during the scoping comment period. Thank you for all of your input along the way that has helped to shape this project. And as always, if you have questions, please get in touch.
Perfect. And going to the next slide there. So as noted in the video, the Crenshaw Northern Extension project would extend the Crenshaw LAX line, which is currently under construction, north from the E line or the Expo line to connecting to the D or the purple line along Wilshire Boulevard, and of course, then connecting to the B or the red line at Hollywood. If you're not familiar with the map on the right, the green line, this is the C line, of course, this is the green line, the east-west line. Just above that is the LAX people mover, those dashed bullets over there. And then just above that is the next horizontal line up is the Expo line or the E line, which will be the current terminus of the Crenshaw LAX project. The purple dash line above that, of course, is the purple line, which is currently under construction. And that pink dashed arrow line just above that, it's pointing to the Hollywood Highlands station. And that's where we want to get to. Perfect. So with that, so by closing this gap in the regional north-south transit network, the project would directly link to 4 of Metro's rail lines and 5 of the heaviest bus lines in the entire county, allowing for seamless one-seat ride from the South Bay, South LA, LAX, all the way to Mid-City, Central Los Angeles, West Hollywood, and Hollywood, with further connections north to the San Fernando Valley via the Metro B or the Red Line. In fact, the project would allow Crenshaw LAX line riders to access the entire Metro Rail system, including all Metro Rail stations with at most just one single transfer. Additionally, the project could provide service to some of the busiest and most dense populations and densities in the centers in Southern California through here. But based on the Measure M schedule, which was approved by LA voters in 2016, construction for the project would start in the year 2041 and open for service in 2047. Measure M provides $2.24 billion in funding for the project. However, efforts to accelerate the project are being explored with the cities of West Hollywood in coordination with the city of Los Angeles and Metro, conducting an early project delivery study in 2020 to identify alternative funds that could potentially help build the project sooner. And with that, I have the next slide here. So the project objectives. So the project aims to satisfy multiple objectives, including, of course, is closing the regional transit network gap. Of course, we want to provide a fast and reliable transit alternative to congested highways and roadways, of course. As many of you know and you're aware out there, the project area, it's pretty congested out there. Of course, is due to the concentration of jobs, residents, and major destinations within the central region over here. At the same time, travel within and through this area is greatly constrained due to the high demand for travel to and from this area, coupled with limited roadway access. Of course, we want to improve the mobility and accessibility, not just within the project area in central LA, but throughout the county and a wider region. And of course, we want to cultivate a transit-friendly environment and maximize the potential for smart population and job growth. So if this project were to be constructed, the project would greatly improve mobility and access to jobs and opportunities for all county residents, especially transit-dependent residents in equity-focused communities from South Bay and South LA, all the way north to the San Fernando Valley. And with that, Alex is going to take you through the alignments and options, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. This next map shows how the project fits into the overall transportation network and other Measure M projects underway in this general area, including, as Roger mentioned, the Purple Line extension, which will open in Beverly Hills in 3 years and all the way to Westwood by 2027. This project would directly connect to the Purple Line in the Miracle Mile area. To the north in the San Fernando Valley, there's the North Hollywood Pasadena Bus Rapid Transit Project. And on the west side, there's the Sepulveda Transit Corridor, which will link the San Fernando Valley to the west side and ultimately LAX. Before we go into the specific alternatives for the project, here's a brief history of some of the past studies that are related to our current efforts. From as far back as 2003, planning studies for the Crenshaw LAX line have explored opportunities to extend the line all the way to Wilshire and the Purple Line, and even further north to Hollywood. However, due to funding constraints, any segment of the line north of the Expo or E line was eliminated from the Crenshaw LAX line project back in 2009. At roughly that same time, the West Side Subway Extension, EIR, was studying a potential heavy rail extension from Hollywood through West Hollywood and Mid-City West to the Purple Line on Wilshire. The current studies for a northern extension of the Crenshaw LAX line began in 2016 with the passage of Measure M and Metro's board commitment to bring this project, along with others, to a shovel-ready status in case of potential funding opportunities for project acceleration. An initial alternative study was completed in 2018, as Roger mentioned, followed by an alternative screening study last year in 2020. This next map shows the initial 5 alternatives that were explored in the alternatives analysis study. From west to east, they were San Vicente, La Cienega, Fairfax, La Brea, and Vermont. The alternatives analysis study showed that all alternatives to Hollywood would attract significant ridership, with approximately 90,000 boardings or more on a daily basis. The La Brea alternative is the shortest, fastest, and most cost-efficient alignment. It's the most direct route between Mid-City and Hollywood, with a minimum total of 6 new stations over about 6.5 miles. Next slide, please. Part of the original alternatives analysis study looked at existing jobs and residents within just a half-mile walking distance of all the alternatives that extend to Hollywood. This analysis showed that while all of the alternatives serve a significant number of jobs and residents, the Fairfax and Fairfax-San Vicente alternatives and stations serve the most jobs and residents by far, by directly linking some of the biggest job centers in the region, including places like the Grove Farmers Market, CBS Television City, the Pacific Design Center, and Cedars-Sinai Medical Center campus. This jobs and residents analysis showed that compared to the La Brea alternative, the Fairfax alternative would serve more than twice the number of jobs than La Brea, and the San Vicente alternative would serve more than quadruple the number of jobs than La Brea, or double that of Fairfax. Even when broken down by distance, the longer Fairfax and San Vicente alternatives would serve significantly more residents and especially jobs per mile than La Brea. In line with this analysis, existing transit ridership near potential project stations also reflects the heavy activity and congestion near some of these major job centers. Transit ridership near the Fairfax alternative stations is roughly 3 times that of the La Brea stations, while transit ridership near the Fairfax-San Vicente alternative stations is over 4 times that of the La Brea alternative. And on the next slide, this has largely been reflected in the comments we have received to date regarding the project. We've had several opportunities for public meetings throughout the previous studies and have collected a significant number of comments so far, many of which have shaped the current alternatives and options under study. Overall, we've heard strong support for accelerating the project and opening it sooner than the Measure M schedule date of 2047. We've also heard preferences for the project to serve some of the major destinations and job centers in the western half of the project area, including a desire to combine alternatives or build more than one or even all of them. We've also had heard considerable support for extending the line further north than Hollywood Highland to serve the Hollywood Bowl venue. Based on public feedback and additional technical analyses, we have refined the project alternatives to these 3 routes shown on this map for further study during this EIR environmental process. All of these alternatives would be entirely underground in a subway configuration, with the potential exception of a small section along San Vicente Boulevard in Mid-City between Stanley Avenue in the west and Midtown Crossing in the east, which I'll get to shortly. Before I go through each of the alternatives, I'd like to emphasize that all alternatives have the same station locations, both in the north and in the south. In the south, all the alternatives extend the Crenshaw LAX line north from its terminus at Crenshaw Expo under Crenshaw Boulevard to a station at Crenshaw and Adams in the heart of West Adams. They all then continue north to a station at Midtown Crossing in the Pico Rimpau Transit Center in Mid-City along San Vicente between Venice and Pico Boulevard. Similarly, in the north, all of the alternatives have a station at Santa Monica and La Brea in eastern West Hollywood and Hollywood Highland to connect to the Metro B or Red Line with an additional optional station at the Hollywood Bowl. So the primary difference between the alternatives is between the Midtown Crossing station in the south and the Santa Monica La Brea station in the north. The La Brea alternative would use La Brea Avenue as a more direct route to connect the Midtown Crossing station with Hollywood, with 2 additional interim stations at Wilshire La Brea, connecting to the D or Purple Line, and Beverly La Brea, near the neighborhood of Hancock Park. Like all the alternatives, it would continue north to stations at Santa Monica and La Brea and Hollywood Highland, with an optional extension north to the Hollywood Bowl. As I mentioned before, the La Brea alternative would have a minimum of 6 stations over about 6.5 miles. The total travel time between the Expo line and Crenshaw Expo all the way to Hollywood Highland would be just over 12 minutes. This next map gives some more context to the La Brea alternative, as well as the 2 longer alternatives that I'll go through now, Fairfax and Fairfax San Vicente, or the hybrid alternative. The Fairfax alternative would follow San Vicente Boulevard from Mid-City's Midtown Crossing Station, then Fairfax Avenue, north through Miracle Mile and Mid-City West, with additional stations at Wilshire Fairfax to connect to the Metro D or Purple Line, and on Fairfax between 3rd and Beverly, near the Grove and CBS Television City. It would then continue north to a station at Santa Monica Fairfax in central West Hollywood and proceed, just like La Brea and all the alternatives, to Santa Monica La Brea and Hollywood Highland with an optional extension to the Hollywood Bowl. This Fairfax alternative would have a minimum of 7 stations over 8 miles, with the total end-to-end travel time to Hollywood Highland of about 15 minutes, or 3 minutes longer than La Brea. And finally, the third alternative is this Fairfax San Vicente or hybrid alternative. This alternative would follow the exact same route and stations as the Fairfax alternative, north to a station at Wilshire Fairfax and Museum Row, and a station under Fairfax between Beverly and 3rd near the Grove and CBS. From there, it would veer west under Beverly Boulevard to a station at Beverly and La Cienega, near the Beverly Center, Beverly Connection, and Cedars-Sinai Medical Center campus. It would then head north to a station at Santa Monica San Vicente to serve the Pacific Design Center, West Hollywood's Rainbow District, and the Sunset Strip. It would then continue east under Santa Monica Boulevard with stations at Santa Monica and Fairfax, and just like all the alternatives, Santa Monica La Brea and Hollywood Highland with an optional extension to the Hollywood Bowl. This alternative includes a potential optional station at Santa Monica and La Cienega as well, though it may be possible to serve Western West Hollywood with a single station, including possibly somewhere between San Vicente and La Cienega. It's important to note that this Fairfax San Vicente or hybrid alternative would serve all of the same station areas and destinations as the Fairfax alternative, plus additional destinations along the San Vicente corridor. This Fairfax San Vicente or hybrid alternative would have a minimum of 9 stations over just under 10 miles, with the total travel time of about 20 minutes all the way to Hollywood Highland. So that's between 4 to 5 minutes longer than the Fairfax alternative from end to end, and up to 8 minutes longer than the La Brea alternative from end all the way to the other end. Or in other words, the La Brea alternative would be 3 minutes shorter than Fairfax and up to 8 minutes shorter than Fairfax San Vicente or the hybrid. The Fairfax San Vicente or hybrid alternative was introduced directly as a result of public feedback we've received on the project to date. It provides a much easier connection for riders transferring between the Purple Line and the project by moving that connection from Wilshire San Vicente, or a 1/3 of a mile walk, to Wilshire Fairfax. The new Fairfax San Vicente alternative, as shown on the map, could potentially serve most of the major activity centers in the project area while still offering a fast, reliable, and competitive travel option for regional through riders and trips that traverse this area. While this alternative has several curves in the northern half of the project area, This type of curvature is quite common on mass transit systems, especially subway systems, around the country and around the world. By being entirely below ground in subway tunnels, these types of alignments can directly link major activity centers and areas of significant transit ridership together while maintaining fast travel speeds and avoiding areas that might not generate much ridership, and in a more cost-effective manner than building several lines and projects in a particular geographic area, given heavily constrained resources and major Measure M commitments throughout the rest of the entire county. Also, I should note that all of these curves, in accordance with Metro's rail design criteria, would have wide radii and are located directly adjacent to potential stations where trains are already slowing and stopping, thereby greatly minimizing any travel time delay for riders. In fact, a great way to experience what these curves would be like to ride is to ride the Metro Red or B-Line subway through East Hollywood now, between the Hollywood Western and Sunset Vermont stations. Because of the wide radius of that curve from under Vermont to under Hollywood Boulevard, as well as its adjacency to the Vermont Sunset Station, it's nearly impossible to notice any slowdown or time delay due to the curve itself. Regardless of alternative, each line and extension, including this project, requires a maintenance and storage facility for the additional light rail vehicles that will be needed to operate the full line from South LA and LAX all the way to Hollywood. The draft EIR will explore several potential sites for this facility adjacent to and near the current Southwest Yard that is being constructed for the Crenshaw LAX line, which is located just northeast of the LAX airport around the intersections of Aviation and Arbor Vitae. This next slide shows peak period travel time comparisons between some major points throughout the county and project area with and without the project. The first two columns are origins and destinations. The third column is typical peak period or rush hour travel times by auto. The next column or fourth column shows typical peak period travel times on the existing and future transit network without the project. These times incorporate other Measure M transit projects that are scheduled to open before this project, but do not include this project. And finally, the last column shows the potential travel times with this Crenshaw Northern Extension project in place. You can read through here several examples, but I'll point out some of them. A trip from Hollywood to Cedars-Sinai could be reduced from over 30 minutes during rush hour today to just 8 minutes every time, regardless of traffic conditions or time of day. Cedars-Sinai to West Adams could be reduced from almost an hour to just 10 minutes every time, regardless of traffic or time of day. Leimert Park to Westwood could go from over an hour today to 26 minutes, and LAX all the way to Miracle Mile or the Grove could go from an hour to just half an hour every time. In addition to the three different alternatives, there are several design options that we would like your input on, which are shown on this map. I'll go through each one starting in the south with the alignment options between West Adams Station and Mid-City. As you can see on this map, we have two route options that would link the Crenshaw Adams Station in West Adams and Midtown Crossing Station in Mid-City. Alignment option 1 would primarily run below the major roadways of Crenshaw and Venice Boulevards, while alignment option 2 would follow a shorter, more direct route between the two stations. Next slide, please. The vast majority of the project, if not the entire project, would be in a subway or underground configuration. Depending on this next option, the entire project could be 100% subway or underground from end to end. We previously shared a vertical profile option that included potential at-grade rail in the median of San Vicente Boulevard through Mid-City between Stanley Avenue, just south of Olympic, and La Brea Avenue, where it transitioned up to an aerial structure to serve an aerial station at Midtown Crossing before going back underground near the West Boulevard Bridge. Based on feedback we've heard from the community, we have now added a fully underground design option for this section, including an underground station at Midtown Crossing. It should be noted that the rest of the project, regardless of alternative or option, would run in a subway or underground configuration due to a variety of major factors, including traffic volumes and congestion, roadway widths and capacities, adjacent land uses, and the need to be grade separated at major intersections. This includes everything north of Olympic Boulevard and south of Venice Boulevard. With this San Vicente subway option included, the entire project, regardless of alternative, would be 100% entirely in a subway or underground configuration. And finally, at the northern end of the project, we've added an option to extend the line further north from Hollywood Highland and the Red or B line connection, with the potential northern terminus station at the Hollywood Bowl, near Highland and the 101 freeway. And now Roger will take us through the EIR process and next steps for the project.
Hey, thanks, Alex. That's pretty awesome there, sir. So as we mentioned before, we're currently in the state environmental clearance phase of the project with the draft environmental impact report, as well as doing the advanced conceptual engineering. Advanced conceptual engineering is used to help support the environmental document. So we talk about the advanced conceptual engineering. So following the advanced conceptual engineering, the project will need to go through further engineering and design work, including possible federal environmental clearance, of course, if any federal dollars are attached to this project in the future. After that, the final engineering or design construction can begin, followed by revenue service of the line. And on the next slide here, the current environmental clearance phase of the project will analyze the project and its potential impacts and benefits from a variety of standpoints, including construction feasibility, potential mitigations that could lessen or even avoid any potential adverse impacts from the project and its construction through here. This slide here shows the EIR categories. There's about 23 of them listed over here that will be studied and identified during this process, including things like air quality, soil, ground conditions, to energy and water resources. So the EIR analysis will include a full assessment of impacts during construction of the project as well. So station construction is generally where we have the biggest impacts because that's where the excavation is going on at the stations. So in between the stations, of course, you have the tunnel boring machines going under the streets and under properties. So we're pretty good there. But at the stations, we generally may close an intersection for several weekends where we go in and excavate about 10 to 15 feet down where we go in. So 10 to 15 feet down and put cross beams across the street of that. And from that, we put a concrete deck on the top of that. So traffic can continue to move as we continue to construct the station below the street. And the conceptual engineering on the right side, this place kind of gives you an idea of what it would actually look like over here. So for the next several years, we're building it. We leave the decking in place, and in the end, we come back and remove the concrete decking and build the street on top of the subway station. So the EIR will evaluate and identify the tunnel and station construction processes for all the proposed alternatives, including truck hauling routes and other traffic considerations, as well as air quality and noise levels during specific construction activities. With that, so the next slide, of course, the funding considerations. So the EIR will include a more detailed analysis of cost for the project alternatives, building off the initial estimates from the previous study. Each of these alternatives will cost more than the Measure M allocation for this project, so other potential funding sources would be crucial to project feasibility. These sources could include federal, state, and/or local funding, as well as value capture mechanisms and potential public-private partnerships that could help shoulder some of the extra costs. And with that, we're going to turn the information back over to Patrick, and thank you again for joining us tonight. Have a good night.
Thank you, Roger. For the next steps of the EIR process, we'll be gathering and documenting all community input at this and other scope meetings, as well as through mail, email, and our project hotline. We will then use that feedback to further refine alternatives and assess the full spectrum of impacts of each alternative, both during construction and once in operation, including possible mitigation measures to reduce these impacts to a less than significant level, or even avoid or eliminate certain impacts. By the end of the draft EIR process, we hope to identify a proposed project to bring back to the Metro Board for their approval. For the next steps, I want to give you a rundown of the next steps before we start taking your comments, Should some of you should some of you leave after sharing your comments? After we receive all of your comments during the scoping period, we will prepare a scoping report which summarizes all the comments, and we will use all of that information as we go forward in the environmental process, including future community meetings, to provide periodic updates for the community. Right now, we're in early May, and I assume we'll be back in the fall with an update on all comments we've heard, what the next steps are, and an update on how we are proceeding with the analysis. Metro will post all information on their project page. You can go there to get information about meetings, status, and reports that are available. We will notify everyone who came to this meeting who signed in, and we will add your information to our stakeholder list about future meetings. Again, we will post all recordings of the scope meetings on the project page. We strongly encourage everyone to provide feedback however they can, whether it's today or through email, mail, or etc. Some key topics you might want to share include: what are the environmental issues you may be concerned about? Do you have a preference regarding the alternatives or design options under consideration, including potential station locations? We ask that you limit your comments today to 2 minutes to allow everyone who'd like to participate a chance to provide feedback. We will be listening to and documenting all of your comments, but will not be answering your questions at this time in this forum. Again, with the code of conduct, please address all comments to Metro staff and consultants and not other attendees. And please also just try to maintain a conversational tone and kind of take your time. We have a court reporter who is recording this as well. So how to submit your comments. In order to submit oral comments today, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or dial *9 on your phone. When we have announced that it's your turn to speak, you'll be prompted to unmute your mic both on Zoom or on your phone. You will have 2 minutes to comment. Please try to pace yourself as you speak. As I mentioned, the court reporter will be transcribing your comments. You can also submit written comments today using the Zoom question and answer feature. And of course, you can always submit comments to our project hotline at 213-418-3093 or by emailing us at crenshawnorth@metro.net. And as you see there's the technical, just go back real quick. You'll see the technical assistance number that'll be up there the whole time. So that's 213-316-6105. And this is the second scope meeting. The next meeting will be this Saturday. Here's all the contact information to send in comments by mail, email, the project hotline, as well as the project website. And I just wanted to recognize West Hollywood City Councilman Erickson is joining us. Thank you for joining us today. Take it away, Melanie.
Our first 3 speakers will be Alexander, Tanas, and Austin. Alexander, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I have many concerns about this, like the fact that you decided to make it light rail, because I think it should be a subway like the present day Red Line subway or the Purple Line subway extension that's being built, because subways are way faster than light rail. And this project that'll connect like the main 3 lines in LA should have like a fast, reliable way to switch from one line to another. And I think it should go to the Culver City station on the Expo light rail line, because that's more in the middle and closer to Santa Monica, and a more important station, Culver City. Yeah, and I think it should pass by the La Cienega future Purple Line station of the Purple Line through West Hollywood. And I think it should be a subway when it goes under Santa Monica Boulevard, because that's like one of the most busiest boulevards in the city. And a light rail would take away like 2 lanes from that boulevard, increasing the traffic, which is why I think it should all be subway for the connection. And I already sketched out a map of my idea, which I've already emailed. So yeah, that's what I have to say. And I wonder why will it take until like till like 2047 for this project to get like constructed? Why will it take so long, I wondered. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Tanez, Austin, and Rohan. Tanez, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Tanaz Darucci and I live in Sherman Oaks. I think this project is so important for Metro and LA, and I wish it was already in place years ago. Even when I used to live on the West Side, I remember how difficult it was to try to go anywhere near West Hollywood or the Grove, even on weekends and before or after rush hour. There's so many places in this area, but they're so hard to get unless you live right there. We need a subway line that can get us right to the center of this busy area without having to deal with traffic and parking, which is a problem all day here. LA always seems to get these projects wrong, unfortunately. The Green Line goes within a mile or two of LAX, but doesn't actually reach it. So you have to wait for a shuttle bus transfer and just hope you're lucky it comes on time and doesn't get stuck in traffic too. Same thing here. Please don't make the mistake of getting within miles and then asking people to transfer to small buses to actually reach these big destinations in West Hollywood. Please build the hybrid route and build it now, not in 2047. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Austin, Rohan, and Nikki. Austin, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I am a proud West Hollywood resident who is very excited to see these opportunities on the table. I am in support of all of the options that we have in bringing rail through Mid-City and up to West Hollywood, but the hybrid alignment is my personal favorite. I believe it serves the highest ridership as well as the current and future transit-oriented developments, which are so critically important. We really have one shot to do this right. We cannot slow down the process that has gained so much momentum and support. Thank you all to everyone here who helped make that a reality. The prompt was made of what do we have concerns with? My concern is just that we're going to get tripped up in smaller details and miss the overall effort and a chance to make this solution come to through our city and connect so many people as quickly as it possibly could. So the quicker we can have this be done, the better that will be. I understand there's a lot of things to work through, so just thank you to everybody who's problem solving, and I can't wait to see this come through my city. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Rohan, Nikki, and Seth. Rohan, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Rohan. I have lived in LA my whole life, and I just wanted to express my strong support for the hybrid alternative that was presented today. I feel like in my 40 years here in LA, LA has been far too slow in building these kinds of projects, and I want us to get it right the first time. I don't want us to take any shortcuts and then have regrets after the fact as well. The hybrid alternative gives us rail stations in the areas that need them the most, where traffic is an issue all day, places that thousands of people try to reach every day, not just for work, but for play as well. So although it is the longest route, I feel like that is the one that's going to solve the most problems that we have within LA as well. The La Brea alternative, it misses all of those areas where people work and where people go. And it'll just be a quick way to bypass the heart of LA. It just goes from La Brea up to WeHo, especially if the additional time is just 8 minutes to get to some of these areas. I don't think that's a big deal. by taking the long route around, especially if it's 8 minutes on a train and not 8 minutes in a car. It's still going to be much faster than taking a car. Last comment I'll make is that I have heard a lot of people try to frame this entire project as simply just a West Hollywood project. But even with that longest route, most of this whole project is in LA. Only a small part of it will actually be in West Hollywood. So the big job centers in this area, they're all in LA, places that people are all over coming to LA from, they're all in LA. So I really feel like this project is important. I hope that we can get started as soon as possible on it. And I hope that we choose the hybrid alternative here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Nikki, Seth, and AA. Nikki, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I just want to voice my support for this project, which I think is super long overdue. If we can only do one project in this area, then I think it has to be the hybrid alternative. Traffic is only going to get worse, especially as everything reopens after COVID. And I don't think it makes sense to build the La Brea route to serve Hancock Park and bypass all these giant destinations that cause so much traffic. And I've heard the idea of splitting the project into two, but I don't think people realize how long it takes for these projects to actually get done. And if it is split into two, like which one gets built now and which one gets built in the 2040s. And since this idea is nowhere in Measure M, then where would the funding come from? And when would it get built? And just with the slow pace of construction, we just can't wait that long. And I think all of this just to save 8 minutes. I mean, I think we should just build the hybrid alternative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Seth, AA, and John. Seth, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead and speak. We can hear you.
Awesome, thank you. So first off, thank you very much, members of Metro. Very grateful for all the work you've done for the city. I am a Leimert Park resident, so I'm very
We can't hear you.
Is it good now?
Yes, take it away.
Okay. So quickly, very grateful for all the work Metro has done in building out rail in the city. I am a Leimert Park resident, and I just want to first start by saying when the Expo line opened, I thought I would take it downtown all the time. I took it once and then never did it again because it's so slow and gets so bogged down with traffic. So listening to tonight's presentation where they talked about putting this entire line underground is really exciting. I think that's the right choice. Grade separation. I know that there is a lot of talk about doing this the right way, and a lot of people want the hybrid route. I would advocate firmly instead for the La Brea option. I believe that the hybrid option prioritizes the needs of West Hollywood over the needs of the rest of the city. With the La Brea route, we are connecting everyone in the valley with LAX in a much faster option. I believe that speed is really what makes speed increases the utility of any sort of rail, And that's what gets people out of their cars and into the subways. To the West Hollywood needs, I would say build a spur. Absolutely, it is not something on the table right now, but perhaps if more people were to bring it up, it would become a reality. Lastly, I just want to add this. It is rare that the fastest option and the cheapest option are the same. I think that's what makes the La Brea option the best. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be AA, John, and Lauren. AA, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic and you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, I know a lot of people are advocating, just like the last caller, a line up La Brea with a spur going west on Santa Monica Boulevard. And I think that can all be built simultaneously. I'd like Metro to study this option because it will be the fastest north-south route. It will still serve important points of interest in West Hollywood. And in the long term, that spur can be extended to Culver City to the west and ultimately to Venice and Echo Park in the east. So it sets up Metro for further expansion. Given the high cost of the hybrid model, I think this option of building a La Brea line with a spur could be cost competitive. And so I would like Metro to study this option in the next stage of phasing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be John, Lauren, and Tina. John, we will now prompt you to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you for all of your work. I've been listening, I've been studying this for a few years. I've lived my whole life in Los Angeles. And I wish that the ridership numbers were up. They've been up previously. And I know that you emphasize how many jobs are in each area, but when you added the ridership numbers, it became very clear to me that the La Brea option is the best option, the most cost-efficient option, and the one that will have the most riders per dollar spent. And I think that's very important. I think it's irresponsible to spend an extra few $1 billion for West Hollywood. And I am a resident of West Hollywood, and I don't think that that is the right option for the people who really need and will use this. As we all know, ridership numbers have been way down on Metro, and not just because of the pandemic. From November 2018 compared to November 2019, there was 50,000 fewer riders per day on Metro. So we have to keep that in mind and not waste money on something people will not use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Lauren, Tina, and Ted. Lauren, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lauren. I live at Cloverdale and Pico, which is adjacent to the hub over by Ross, by the bus transit connection. And I've been without a car for 5 years. I depend on Metro. I ride my bike or use Metro to get around town. And as you can imagine, that north-south connection is imperative. I depend on rideshare or a ride from a friend to get to the Expo line or the ride line. So I'm one of those people who depend not only on the efficiency of Metro, but also the accessibility. I am so excited for the LAX line. I've been in LA for 10 years. Prior to that, I was in the Bay Area, and San Francisco's expansion to the airport was integral for the whole city to get out there. And so I'm just excited that LA can offer that as well. But as someone who is dependent on Metro, I am in full support of the hybrid model. Not only will it get me to work where is predominantly, I'm a freelance producer, but I work for a lot of clients on Fairfax. Not only is it adjacent to my work, but lots of restaurants on that Fairfax area. And then to be able to go over to Beverly Center, adjacent to all of those restaurants, and giving accessibility for that ridership to have access to the amazing services, not only in West Hollywood, but on the entire route to get up there. And, you know, as a proud fan of the Hollywood Bowl as well, being able to get to that Hollywood and Highland connection point is integral for that access to the Valley. And, you know, as someone who has depended on this system, I'm so excited that you have invited us for public comment, and I hope that the hybrid option is chosen. Thank you so much for listening to our opinions, and thank you for all that you do to make this city more accessible for all of us.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Tina, Ted, and Anthony. Tina, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Tina Vartanian. I first wanted to thank you all for all the work that you've done. I do want to say that I do support the hybrid option. I think that would have the highest ridership, and it would allow a lot of folks to get access to jobs that are available on that side of Los Angeles region. And that's all I needed to say.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Ted, Anthony, and Alexander. Ted, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Ted Green. I'm a lifelong resident of Los Angeles County, except for 5 years in the 1980s when I lived in Washington, D.C. As a 12-year-old, I started riding the RTD line 76 to Westwood Village to see movies, and it changed my life. So I know what public transit can do for people. I strongly support the westernmost hybrid route going through the heart of West Hollywood and across West Hollywood. You know, the reason that line is so logical is it brings light rail back to where it was first installed 120 years ago. San Vicente Boulevard and Santa Monica Boulevard, before they were streets, that's where the red car line ran, and the land use built up around it over the following decades. That's why so many people live nearby in a dense situation, why there are so many employers nearby and so many places that people want to visit. I support building stations at San Vicente, La Cienega, and Fairfax. You know, in New York and DC, in the urban parts of those subway systems, they have stops every 8 to 10 blocks. And that's what encourages people to use them. The 7 years between this summer and the summer of 2028 are going to be absolutely gangbuster go-go years leading up to the Olympics. And I urge the MTA to build this line in time to be operating for the summer of 2028. You know, the stars have aligned. We have a president who spent most of his life commuting to work by rail. We have a Secretary of Transportation who had one of his very first presidential campaign events in California along this very route on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood. The stars have aligned. We can get the money. We can make it happen. And I urge MTA to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Anthony, Alexander, and Robert. Anthony, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Anthony Volin, and I'm strongly in support of the hybrid model. This is the most Western version that we have, and I think if we settled on La Brea, it would be a huge missed opportunity. And some people said it's the cheapest. Well, the cheapest opportunity is to not build anything at all, and I think that would be crazy, and none of us would agree with that. It's not about the cheapest model, but it's about what's going to serve our citizens of LA at the highest level. And the hybrid model really does that. If we don't do that, there'd be a huge gap in our city of no metro. And this is our one chance to do that. I also support stations at San Vicente, La Cienega, and Fairfax. And of course, the sooner we could build this, the better. Before the Olympics would just really, really be amazing. So thank you so much for all the work you've been doing, Metro, and hybrid model. Let's see if we can get that done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Alexander, Robert, and Taylor. Alexander, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you so much, everyone, for putting this together. It was truly informative about our current situation. I just wanted to raise my voice in support of the hybrid model. As basically a lifelong resident of Southern California, particularly West Hollywood and the surrounding area, this is just the model that will help us capitalize on all of the future progress and development that's going to happen as COVID alleviates and other opportunities transpire. So if we have an opportunity to make this kind of investment, we should make it in the right way. And from everything that I'm seeing, the hybrid model is the way to go. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Robert, Taylor, and Karen. Robert, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Robert Oliver. I'm a West Hollywood resident. I want to voice my support for the hybrid alignment. This alignment is most in line with Metro's goals. It comes down to connectivity. The hybrid alignment would serve the most people, industries, communities, and lifestyles, and it would encourage the highest ridership. It is the obvious choice, and it is worth the investment. This would connect other communities to West Hollywood and make public transportation not only a viable option, but a better, faster, and cheaper alternative to driving. It could also mean safer streets with people taking a subway for a night out and not driving home intoxicated. We have one of the busiest airports in the country, and this line would connect it to world-famous landmarks, entertainment, and hotels, as well as giving residents a viable alternative to driving to the airport. In my view, it would fundamentally change how people get around to LA. We only get one shot at this, and we need to get it right. I encourage you to select the hybrid alignment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Taylor, Karen, and Mark. Taylor, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak. So my name's Taylor. I live at the corner of Crenshaw and Adams, like right at the corner of Crenshaw and Adams. I think when this is built, I may be the person who lives the closest to any of these stations out of all of them. So I'll be very likely to use this very frequently. I'm a bus rider. I use transit as my primary mode of transportation, except for when I'm biking. And I use transportation my entire adult life. So I'd like to express my support for the La Brea line, which is far and away going to be the best one to connect Los Angeles. More though than a La Brea line supporter, I'd probably say that I'm a hybrid line detractor. So I think anybody who uses rail lines knows that the primary place that you go on a rail line is to a different rail line. Nobody really expects the line to pick you up at your house and drop you off right at your job or wherever you're going. You go to another line and you transfer. You look at the New York line and the New York subway system, one of the best in the world, and it's a grid. And you go to Berlin and you have a circle with a grid in the center. It's really the connections and the transfers that make a transit system as powerful as it can be. And the La Brea line does exactly this. It connects other rail lines to each other, and it makes the entire system more usable. The hybrid line does exactly the opposite. It may get you to the hospital, but it does a much worse job getting you downtown, getting you to Westwood, getting you to LAX, getting you to Culver City, getting you to Santa Monica. Most people are going to one of those other locations, not specifically to West Hollywood. So please keep this in mind and choose the La Brea line. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Robert, Karen, and Mark. Robert, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
I just spoke.
Our next three speakers will be Karen, Mark, and David. Karen, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hello, good evening. I'm Karen O'Keefe, and I'm from West Hollywood. I live very close to the corner of Fairfax and Santa Monica Boulevard, and I haven't owned a car in about 20 years. I support the hybrid model, the one that includes Fairfax and San Vicente, and having it extend to the Hollywood Bowl. California's #1 contributor to greenhouse gas emissions is transportation. And we need to shift as many trips as we can from the car to other modes of transportation. And I believe the hybrid model is the best approach to do so. The region that's included in this model would cover a huge number of tourists, the workers that serve them in the city, the large number of jobs here, Cedars-Sinai, and lots of destinations that people go to for nightlife and for festivals like the Halloween Carnival. West Hollywood is extremely dense and it's very supportive of transit and eager for this option. It also has 3.6 million tourists as of the last fiscal year I found data for, that was a normal year, which serve about 8,000 jobs. If we want to include all of these individuals and have them be able to get from LAX to stay in the city and to visit the city, we would need to include these destinations. We're in a climate crisis, and this is opportunity to connect far more people to an alternative to cars that people are hungry for. Every other mode of transportation, like buses that would be mass transit, is stuck behind cars other than the few bus rapid transit lines. This is a way to get people to move faster than cars, even if it adds an extra 8 minutes to some trips. It will include far more people and still should be far faster than cars. So I urge the city, the region, and Metro to move as quickly as it can to build this. I like the idea of doing it before the Olympics as well. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our next 3 speakers will be Mark, David, and Daniel. Mark, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hey, my name is Mark Heller. I'm a 20-year West Hollywood resident, and I'm here to express my support for the hybrid model. I'll keep it brief because many of the benefits were already highlighted in the presentation and by previous speakers. But I do think it's essential to West Hollywood's future and prosperity to keep all of its residents connected to LAX, to downtown, the South Bay, the East Side, the Valley, and more. It would be a shame not to serve our whole city. I'm imagining a similar conversation happening in New York a little over 100 years ago. So I feel like this is our one chance to make sure West Hollywood doesn't get left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next 3 speakers will be David, Daniel, and Daryl. David, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I do want to speak about 3 of the alternatives. In speaking about these alternatives, I just want to make sure we don't make the same mistake we did with the Green Line, where we built a line to nowhere. So yes, while La Brea may be the cheapest and the most direct, but it also hits the least points of where people want to go aside from the 2 ends. So I think the only 2 really that would make sense for usage would be Fairfax and the hybrid. In looking at the hybrid, yes, it serves the most points of interest and where people would want to go, but it's also the most expensive. And I was really concerned with the fact that I could not find any place looking at some of the surface types of alignments, at grade alignments, particularly along Santa Monica Boulevard, which used to have a rail line at grade. It can be done, that it could be done efficiently and not bogged down in traffic if the trains were given priority over the red lights. So I think, I don't know if it was studied. I couldn't find it in any of the documents that are released on the website. But I would like to see that studied to make that alternative more cost effective. Barring that, I would speak in favor of the Fairfax alternative as my choice, because I think it merges the 2 considerations, cost and hitting the most sites. If cost could be brought down for construction of the hybrid, I then would support that one. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Our next 3 speakers will be Daniel, Daryl, and Catherine. Daniel, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Daniel, please unmute your mic.
Great, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, off we go. Hey, everybody. Daniel Tlelian, proud Metro writer. Thanks to Metro for conducting these outreach meetings. And I'd also note that Metro conducted an additional outreach meeting in my community of Carthay Circle last year at neighborhood request. So kudos for doing the right thing and incorporating our ideas. A few quick points for the record. One, I'd note that decades ago, transportation planners routed the 10 freeway through mid-city and divided our city between north and south. Good for Metro to plan the Crenshaw extension to reconnect these parts of the city. Please, please do not make the same mistake by considering an above grade line on San Vicente and resplitting the mid-city neighborhoods between Pico and Stanley. Please remove the at grade aerial options from EIR scoping and only study below grade options. Two, I support the Fairfax and La Brea options as the most efficient and directly northbound options. Indeed, I still lament the fact that the Crenshaw extension does not run up Crenshaw, and I hope Metro can revisit the possibility of a D-line station location at Wilshire and Crenshaw in future planning. Finally, I believe that the less efficient hybrid loop that accommodates West Hollywood destinations at the cost of commuter time and financial resources should only be considered if West Hollywood and frankly Cedars-Sinai can help finance the delta or the financial gap resulting from the additional stations and rail distance. I also support the study of our West Hollywood spur concept as an add-on for the true north-south lines. Thank you for your strong efforts, Metro. This is a big lift and you guys have been great. Perhaps the last thing I'd say in my last few seconds is that 8 minutes isn't 8 minutes. It's 8 minutes per train for all of the millions of riders over time. So it's a big loss of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Daryl, Catherine, and Michael. Daryl, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Aha, I think I'm unmuted. Okay. I live in Pasadena, formerly was in Santa Monica, and was a longtime Expo Line proponent. I've been a strong supporter of serving the greater West Hollywood area with a north-south line like this ever since Hollywood was considered in the Purple Line's planning. It's a perfect fit with high population and job density, terrible car access, and great connectivity. I support the hybrid alternative to serve the core Cedars-Sinai, West Hollywood, Grove, and LACMA areas. And I would note, if the first caller is still on the line, this is a subway that he was asking for, just as fast as the purple and red lines, only with a little bit shorter trains. And thank you again. I hope we can find the funding to get this thing built. 2047, I would be approaching 100 years old. I wanted to have it finished before that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Catherine, Michael, and Justin. Catherine, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hey, thank you guys so much for doing this. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so two things. I am actually like in Hancock Park, so you would think that I would be, and I sold my car a few years ago. So you would think that I would be a proponent of the La Brea route, but I am supporting the hybrid model. I think it is more valuable to the communities at hand. And one of the things that I would like to mention that has not really been brought up in this conversation is that I think that the extension of the route to the Hollywood Bowl is ludicrous. And I can't really fathom why that's being considered. It seems to me a giant waste of money. If people are considering that the addition of West Hollywood to like the most populous areas is a waste of money, then I can't imagine who exactly out there is thinking that it's a good use of public funding to go to the Hollywood Bowl when the people who go to the Hollywood Bowl, and I do go to the Hollywood Bowl frequently, you park at Hollywood and Highland and you walk. Or if you are with somebody who has like a season pass to the Phil, there's parking. So the idea that Metro would even think to expand up there at an additional, taxpayer cost is just ridiculous to me. But I love that you guys are doing this public forum. I am so appreciative. I am really excited about this. And I also thank all of the people who talked before me. And yeah.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Michael, Justin, and Esteban. Michael, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
How's everybody going? I'm Michael. I live all the way in Willowbrook, off of 118 place between Avalon and San Pedro. Only 5 minutes from the Avalon station, and wow, there's going to be 2 segments of the Crenshaw line and the South Bay line. They're going to connect with the Crenshaw line. One is going to go from Norwalk all the way to the Crenshaw Expo, and then the other one from the South Bay towards the Crenshaw and Expo. And I'm in support of the San Vicente Fairfax Hybrid, despite what the La Brea Avenue alternate marks have to say, because that route does not direct towards all the destinations where everybody goes to. So the one with the hybrid is the most important, goes to all the direct destinations where people shop, work, entertain, and get around to hang out with their friends and families. So yeah, I'm in support of the hybrid. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Justin, Esteban, and Masonette. Justin, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi there, my name's Justin, and I am fully supporting of the hybrid model, although I would like stops everywhere, because why not be more connected? I hear people bringing up all the other places that are connected, and you know what unifies them is that you can get most places there. It is almost impossible to figure out the bus system here in Los Angeles, and I've lived here my entire life. Also, and for the money thing, I've paid so much money in weed taxes. There is plenty of money to build these subways to get everywhere. So let's make this happen. Let's help people get places. And a lot of people in LA like to drink, and this will make it a little easier and less DUIs. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Esteban, Masonette, and Jacob. Esteban, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Esteban Montemayor. I've been a West Hollywood resident for the last 10 years. I am in support of the hybrid option. I think it's the most important option. It's probably the most important alignment of all the extensions and alignment options that Metro has been looking at after the passage of Measure M. This is vital for not just West Hollywood, but our entire region. I think a lot of speakers have said this before, but it's important to repeat. We should not make the same mistakes of the past, building alignments that are close, but not close enough to getting people to the places they need to be, where they want to be, where they work, near their families, where they live, where they want to socialize. We should just get this done. So I'm in full support of the hybrid model. And in addition to that, and I would disagree with the speaker previously who mentioned concerns around the extension to the Hollywood Bowl. That too was a mistake, not to build an alignment to the bowl. And it's something that we can remedy now, and we should. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Masonette, Jacob, and Jackson. Masonette, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a resident of historic West Adams. I'm about a half a mile east of Crenshaw on Adams. And I find it interesting, the debate between both, hybrid and non-hybrid, or the La Cienega. I think the direct model is more efficient. I'm from the East Coast, originally in New York, and you take the train, you connect, you go, Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn, there's no direct, you got to connect, you got to get off, you got to, you move that way, but that's the most efficient way. What I find interesting is that and I don't know if Metro's even considered it with the housing issues that we have, as not enough housing, and they're trying to build, and developers are trying to build, but it costs about $30,000 per parking spot that they would have to build, which is delaying and cost issues and people's income. Then build housing that doesn't have parking and offer a discounted rate into the Metro line, so people would have more adoption, more efficiencies. I just, for the first 3 years or something like that, it's just something to consider as well. Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Jacob, Jackson, and Adam. Jacob, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Melanie. I'm Jacob Satsky, and I'm a resident of East West Hollywood. So you'd think that I would probably be equally happy with either the Fairfax or the La Brea alignments, considering that I drive to LAX almost every day where I work. But I want to echo the sentiments of the other people that have called in support of the hybrid alignment, because this is one of those moments when you can actually have an alignment that hits not just where people live, but also where they go out. And therefore, you're going to be getting peak travel during not just your typical rush hours, but all day long. So I think we need to not miss this opportunity. I also want to add that the east-west alignment down Santa Monica Boulevard could always be added later and integrate with this alignment, which would not be precluded. So rather than try and wait until you get an east-west alignment in the future, you could just plan for the possibility of spurs to kind of continue through on a future alignment and look at that, 20 years on down the line. But don't miss this opportunity now, getting this north-south connection in, especially with the hybrid alignment on San Vicente. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Adam, Carolyn, and Robert. Adam, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Adam Kroll. I'm a West Hollywood resident. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to make a comment. I'm really excited about the Crenshaw Northern Extension being built for a multitude of reasons folks have already mentioned. It's going to be a great connector regionally and also connect folks locally to a lot of important destinations and resources. I think it's really important that we do think kind of long-term about this. And when we think about environmental impact, how are we getting more and more folks out of their cars and using transit to make sure that our skies and air are clearer? And how are we making sure that the many folks who already rely on transit can more easily get to their destinations, get to their jobs, get to school, places they need to go? And I think it's pretty clear that the hybrid alignment takes folks to the most destinations, and that's really what's going to draw people to it. I understand the concerns that folks have had around the La Brea alignment being a little bit quicker, but the reality is we're just talking about a few minutes difference here for the tremendous added benefit of so many more important destinations that people actually want to go to. It's an argument that you can make about a lot of other lines around the world, that they could have circumvented a lot of other areas and been more direct and gotten people from point A to point B a little bit quicker, but then you would have a lot less folks actually using it. You'd have lower ridership in the long term. So really excited about this project moving forward much sooner than the original plan date of 2047. Thanks again for giving us the opportunity here.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Carolyn, Robert, and Shannon. Carolyn, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Melanie, for sharing this, and for everyone from Metro for all of their hard work and really giving us this opportunity. I am a 35-year homeowner and business owner in West. So I'm thrilled, unfortunately, thrilled that this is happening. However, I will probably ask my family to carry my ashes onto the Metro because I will be long gone by the time this happens. I am passionately in favor of the hybrid. I want to concur with an earlier speaker that noted the West Hollywood stops are nominal compared to the Los Angeles stops. A lot of people think this whole area with the Beverly Center and Cedar, that is Los Angeles. It is not West Hollywood. And I appreciate the deep dive that Metro did on the research to show that the San Vicente hybrid serves 3 times the jobs that the La Brea access does. And people coming to work at Cedars, the Beverly Center, all of these locations, how wonderful that they could sit and relax before they go to work instead of driving, cutting down all of the pollution. Environmentally, I think the hybrid is the best way to go, and I really appreciate.
Karen, we kind of lost you.
Thank you very much. Our next 3 speakers will be Robert, Shannon, and Hannah Kawano. Robert, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I've been following Metro Rail projects for more than 30 years now. And I can tell you that the issues for me are ridership and reduction of traffic congestion. I strongly support the hybrid model, not only because of the number of employees at places like the Beverly Center and Cedars-Sinai, which has more than 13,000 employees, but also I think Metro needs to consider the number of visitors to each of these places each day. It's not only the employees, but there are thousands of visitors who travel to these 2 destinations alone each and every day. And it would be penny wise and pound foolish, nearly unconscionable for LA Metro not to serve these 2 locations. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Our next 3 speakers will be Shannon, Hannah Kawano, and Noah. Shannon, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Shannon Ryan, and I want to just say, we have one bite at the apple here, and we should make the biggest impact that we can. I'm in support of the hybrid model. This is our opportunity to make a lasting investment to bring people to where they work, to institutions, and areas of entertainment. I echo the other comments those in support of the hybrid model have made about thinking about tourists and visitors to this region as well. I think it's also a no-brainer that there should be a Hollywood Bowl station. I have walked from the Red Line station at Hollywood and Highland up Highland to get to the Bowl. And sometimes the sidewalks are so crowded, I walk in the street. So this makes a lot of sense to me. I'd also like to advocate that the entire line be underground. And I was very pleased to see tonight that more serious consideration for the San Vicente segment between Midtown Crossing and Stanley is being considered to be underground. And so I really strongly urge that that option not only be considered, but but be selected and move forward. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm glad to see it happen.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Hana Kawano, Noah, and W. Marks. Hana Kawano, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Oh, good evening. I'm a lifelong resident of Los Angeles. I was leaning towards the La Brea route for all the reasons the proponents of the La Brea route mentioned. But the hybrid route, people gave pretty powerful arguments, but I can't make up my mind. But the one thing that is 100% I am for is adding the Hollywood Bowl route because of the speaker who said, well, you're walking in the street. The sidewalks can't accommodate people walking up from the red line. My biggest concern is with the pandemic and with ride sharing. It's in New York City, the ridership is going down even before the pandemic. And one thing I want to add about the pandemic is the 1918 flu came back every 2 to 3 years up until 1958. And if that's going to happen every 2 or 3 years, the ridership's going to go down. It's going to be a cash crunch. And then the other thing is you must add toilets to these stations. Like in Japan, every train station has a nice clean toilet. And the reason that's so important is there used to be a grocery store, a restaurant that would let you use the bathroom, and not anymore. Not even if you buy something, can you use the bathroom? And it discriminates against elderly and it discriminates against the disabled. Thank you, and that's my say.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Noah, W. Marks, and John. Noah, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, so I'd like to say that I would also be in favor of the Fairfax San Vicente hybrid line. But a few of the concerns that I have is that between San Vicente and La Brea, there's going to be the on-street train. And I think that it should be a subway just because I think it'll create more of a separation between the city that I think is not great, and that it'd be better to just include a subway. I also think that between Rimpau and Wilshire and Fairfax, there's a big gap that needs to be filled in with 1 or 2 more stations so that you don't have people that need to connect onto buses. It's easier for just pedestrians to walk. So adding lines at Crenshaw and Venice, San Vicente and La Brea, San Vicente and Fairfax, and also possibly a stop at La Brea and Sunset would be great additions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be W. Marks, John, and Gerard. W. Marks, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Wally Marks, and I'm a Los Angeles business owner in the Miracle Mile, as well as Culver City and other cities as well. I fully support the La Brea route going north. As a very active Metro rider, speed and ease is vital to get people out of their cars. And I believe a direct route for San Fernando Valley residents and having the shortest route from the Valley all the way to LAX is the wisest move. And with that, I support the creation of a new loop, taking a loop from La Brea and Beverly west to La Cienega and Beverly, and then north up to Santa Monica Boulevard to those stations on the map, further east then back to La Brea and Santa Monica, and having an independent loop for all of those large population and job centers would be an interesting alternative to what's even being supported or presented tonight, still allowing San Fernando residents to come straight down La Brea and in a sense, straight down through West Adams, Leimert Park and on to LAX and other job centers. So it's something new that I'm bringing up. I also support the extension to the bowl. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be John, Gerard, and Jackson. John, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
John still needs to unmute. If you're still there, you need to
John?
unmute.
Can you unmute yourself, John?
Hello?
Oh, hello.
This is Lindsay, not John. Maybe that's why I was confused. Thank you everyone for allowing me to speak tonight, and thank you to Metro staff for conducting these public meetings. I think what we need to focus on tonight is people. And our city of West Hollywood is 36,000 people, but on any given night, pre and hopefully post-COVID, we can up to quadruple in size. And that's not even counting the special events that people come to on an annual basis in our city. People come from all over the world to come not just to our city, but to the entire region. And that's why this alignment is so critical and so important. Metro has demonstrated that they're listening. Evidence tonight is seeing an undergrounding option based on comments that have been heard from neighborhoods along the alignment on San Vicente. So we appreciate that Metro is listening. Hundreds of community and public meetings have been conducted. I've participated in most of them. The time to do this is now. I appreciate the creativity that has been suggested by other folks tonight and at other meetings. But what I do think is important is, once again, people. We shouldn't be delaying a decision that would serve more people and more needs immediately. We don't want to continue to take a backseat when we've been fighting for this for over a decade. The hybrid option contemplates much more public input, and the possibility of an EIFD creates the ability for project-specific policies to address equity, gentrification, rights of first return, and other issues that have come up in community meetings. This isn't just about infrastructure, which serves people. It's a social justice line connecting communities that were divided by redlining and deserve to be connected now. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Gerard, Jackson, and Jeffrey. Gerard, please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. Good evening. My name is Gerard Wright, Government Affairs Director of the Greater LA Realtors. Our association are members of the All on Board coalition that support the hybrid alternative. And we want to thank Metro for hosting tonight and the City of West Hollywood for their longstanding support and leadership for the past decade, as Mayor Horvath has just articulated, to accelerate this vital project and considering the financing of an EIFD to bridge the funding gap. This extension will be a game changer to the region to link many jobs and destinations on the hybrid and the Fairfax alternatives. And our association stretches from Santa Monica all the way through central Los Angeles, linking also Beverly Hills, Century City, and West Hollywood. So our members are very interested in this project. They want to see more information, want to thank Metro for the presentations that have been given to them, and want to hear more about this project as it continues through. Thank you so very much for the time and attention.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Jackson. Jackson, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
All right.
I would like to say to Metro, my name's Jackson. I really like the design. I think you guys have done a great job on the design and planning for this subway, but it seems like funding is the issue that's causing this really quite extreme 20 years for review and engineering. And the construction time looks great, 6 years, but 20 years seems like a really long time for such a crucial piece of infrastructure for this city in order to be able to grow. I was wondering if you guys could publish maybe potential sources for us as constituents of funding that you're going to get in the future, because obviously I think you guys are working hard on getting funding to be able to accelerate this project to a reasonable timeline. But I would like to know so that when I vote and when I make decisions and when I lobby politicians, you know, just sending them letters and phone calls and things, who to pressure to give you guys more funding to be able to speed this up. I think that would be useful. I'd also like to say that I support the La Brea route in the short term. If this is able to be done in the next 10 or 15 years, I'd say go for the La Brea hybrid. Support the hybrid route in the short term, but in the long term, I'd support the La Brea route, because it's understood that transportation demand tends to follow supply. If we build a subway under a spot that doesn't have a lot of jobs or housing right now, who's to say that 30 years from now, a tremendously long time in the future, it's not going to have tons more jobs as a consequence of this subway development? Because that's simply a transportation mode that people will be able to take and they won't even need to think about a car. So I'd say I support that route in the long term, but the hybrid route in the short term.
All right, Melanie, we wanted to give Carolyn just because she got cut off, just give her a chance to finish her thoughts. Is she back on the line? Carolyn Campbell.
That's very kind of you, but our delightful mayor, Lindsay Horvath, said it all. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any speakers left, Melanie?
That was actually our last speaker, Patrick.
Okay. Well, we're going to be here till 8:30. So if anyone is, feels so moved to speak at this point, please just follow the instructions and raise your hand.
Let's see, we actually have a few hands raised. So our next three speakers will be Michael, Jackson, and Eddie. Michael, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Michael. Can you please confirm you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. I wanted to say thank you so much for doing this tonight. It's been a wonderful meeting. I moved to Los Angeles from across the country 3 years ago, and I live in West Hollywood. I did not bring a car with me, and I am a furiously positive supporter of the work you're doing to try to get cars off the road. I am in very strong support of the hybrid model. And I say that because I take Metro all over Los Angeles County and beyond, including all the way down to Disneyland from West Hollywood, which is 2 hours and 45 minutes as it is currently. But I see a lot of people riding, and I give a lot of people directions. And what I found is the nightlife in West Hollywood cannot be understated. It's just a wonderful, fun place to be for many events that happen throughout the year and beyond. And I've given a lot of people directions to it. And I've realized how important it is for people to come and be here, and how common it is. So to see anything that kind of bypasses greatly, which Fairfax and La Brea do, without hitting all the key spots in West Hollywood and beyond, like Cedars-Sinai, which the hybrid model hits, it would be a big mistake to overlook that. So I'm just so proud when I see so many people coming over all over Los Angeles County, even Orange County in to West Hollywood for various reasons. So to bypass that, I just think is a major mistake. So I'm hoping so much that the hybrid model is what is taken. I've heard of some people saying La Brea and then considering the spur. into West Hollywood, but I just think, gosh, that's going to be decades and decades and decades until that would get done. I just don't think it would be worth it right now. Thank you so much for your consideration. I really appreciate the time today. Also, thank you so much for making it below ground, I meant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Eddie, Michael, and Michael. Eddie, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, I am a resident. I live in the area. In fact, I live near Stanley and San Vicente. So if the hybrid model, that is the Fairfax San Vicente route, is adopted, I would be directly impacted. I would obviously favor below ground subway. I think would be less of an impact on those of us who are residents who live in the area. Secondly, I strongly support the decision for the northern extension of the Crenshaw Expo line. In fact, I worked in the area, and I've been waiting how long it was going to take to come around to this a northern extension. So I think that is, that's a great idea. And 2047 is too long. That is ridiculous. I mean, there's no reason why you can't break ground on this project within 5 years, no matter which option is chosen. And I'm through.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Michael, and Noah. Michael, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hello, it's me again. I know we discussed about the hybrid, which that one should be the perfect one over the La Brea alternate. However, I think the route should go like west on 3rd, so that way it could like veer towards San Vicente and have a stop between Beverly Center and Sinai Medical Center, which right there, everybody's gonna get off and get on, rather just having a station over on La Cienega and Beverly. That's my intake.
Thank you very much. Our next two speakers, our next speaker will be Michael, followed by Noah. So Michael, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm a longtime Miracle Mile resident, and I just want to say this is a really great project. I'm looking forward to it. I hope there's some way that we can figure out how to expedite this, because I agree with a lot of the other people that have commented saying that, waiting till 2047 is just absolutely ridiculous. In this day and age, we got to figure out how to do stuff a lot faster and a lot more effectively and efficiently. So I hope they can really focus on trying to speed up this timeline. In terms of the different routes, I think it's really important to either go up the Fairfax route or go up the hybrid route. Either one I think would be fantastic. But one other point I would say is I really think the whole route needs to be subterranean. I think it would be ridiculous for just a little bit of the route to be above ground. And I think that'd have a very detrimental effect to the area where it would be above ground. So I'm a big proponent that the whole thing needs to be underground. And I thank everyone for working on the project, and I look forward to this getting built and really helping out the neighborhood and having great transit, a better public transit in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next three speakers will be Noah, Sam, and Ann. Noah, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
This is a question for you guys. How come it will take till 2041 to start breaking ground? Are you able to hear me?
Just as we mentioned earlier, for scoping, we're really just here to hear the questions or comments. And all we can do at this time is just record what the questions and comments were for you, from you, not exactly respond. So if you have other comments, please feel free to provide them, or other questions that we can record, please feel free to do so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Our next speaker will be Sam. Sam, you will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi there. It's great that there's a lot of West Hollywood contingents on tonight's call, and I'm guessing likely encouraged to join the call by some of the leadership in West Hollywood. I'm actually technically a Los Angeles resident, just a few feet from West Hollywood, but I'm certainly advocating for as much rail as possible. I guess my concern for the comments that's been made in tonight's call would just be that it's worth keeping in mind that there's opinions of people not that it might skew toward those in West Hollywood, which certainly I think my concern is the projects were presented as sort of one or the other. But realistically, I think everyone knows that all corridors highlighted here should really have rail access. I kind of tend to prefer the La Brea axis, mainly because I've spent time in Europe, I've spent time in New York, and efficiency really does matter. So long term, I think that should be something worth considering, mainly because, you know, like we're saying, this is going to take 20, 30 years to build. Realistically, you know, if there's a quicker way to do it and La Brea is the way to do it, great. Again, I don't want to be thinking that this has to be one or the other. I would hope that leadership at Metro is considering, let's do this efficiently, consider the La Brea route, but then also let's simultaneously maybe work with, which I'm sure discussions have been had, with the federal government about saying, yeah, gosh, let's try to figure out, can we do both? Can we walk and chew gum at the same time? Honestly, they're all imperfect options, but I'd hope that short-term thinking is not going to be the deciding factor. And one little small bit of thought with the southern part of that route, or at least perhaps with the option, if it's considered around Fairfax and San Vicente area, I would like to consider perhaps a stop closer to the Little Ethiopia area. It's a great stop, it's a great area, and I wish that area would be highlighted a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Hana Kawano. You will now be prompted to unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, I want to talk about getting another source of money. And can you get money from the government for disaster preparedness? And the reason is the subway in downtown LA, there's 2 huge demonstrations with over 1 million people in the past 20 years. And the subways alone moved everybody out of there in less than 2 hours. So if you have an emergency where the freeways are down, you know, the roads are not passable, the fact that you have the subway and it will still work after an earthquake, can you get some money from like FEMA or something, because you can get people out of the area when you have no roads, no other way in or out. Like for instance, Bay Area Rapid Transit, the tunnel that went under the bay, that was working and operational within, I don't know, like 2 hours after the quake. And then for years, it was the only way to get from the other side of the bay into San Francisco. So I think there's a lot to be said from a public safety standpoint when you have, you know, underground, because it sounds like all of this is going to be underground. So is there a source of money you can get to speed this up? That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. So that was actually our last speaker, Patrick.
Well, if there's anyone who wants to speak in this last minute, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we plan to stay here till 8:30. I think we've had a lot more comments and participation than we did in the last meeting. Yes, we'll, as I said, we will post the recording of this meeting on our website, the project website, for people to see. As well, if you want to see kind of a version of the presentation that was provided, the story map is also there and has the video and pictures and other information that was provided in the presentation. So if you just go to Crenshaw North, metro.net / Crenshaw North, click on the meetings tab and just scroll down, you'll see the link that's right there for you. So if there's no one else who's raised their hand, then I think we're going to close it down. And so we definitely thank you for staying with us for 2 hours tonight and for all the comments and feedback. Thank you.